consistent speeding or full power. Out, 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 here, here, here. Shot, shot, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Slice, 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 slice. Down, down, here, here, up, down, slice, up, close.
Ooh, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another session of Coffee and Martial Arts. Salud, salud, salud. Cheers. Oh, yes. And today we have an amazing show for you. Yes, sir. We have a super guest, a very, very well-known gentleman with a lot of stories to share, you know, with a very successful career in the martial arts, but also as an author and a screenwriter. Yes, sir. I'm talking about Mr. Tom Bleecker. You know, I've known about him and about his work for many, many years. You know, it all started, I remember, of course, the book, The Journey, right, which is, well, a very important book in the Kenpo community, right? So we have the oral histories of 24 of the most proficient American Kenpo stuff today. And I might say I'm in one picture in that book. Yes, sir, I am, with my instructor, Grandmaster Larry Tatum. So, of course, when I saw the book, I was very excited. And the first thing I saw was my picture, of course. But anyway, the man has been in Kenpo. He started Kenpo almost 60 years ago, back in 62, in the West LA school, you know, the iconic West LA school. Of course, back in those days, the most important schools were the Pasadena one and the West LA ones, which moved locations and stuff. You know your history. But anyway, he started, you know, and back in those days, there were basically, you know, just getting started with Kenpo. You had, you know, your seniors of the day, like Grandmaster Chuck Sullivan and those guys. And Mr. Bleecker got to really involved. He was 16 years old back in those days when he started Kenpo. And then, you know, 2 years later, as a brown belt, he went to the first internationals, right? The IKC, and he met, of course, a very interesting Chinese young man, Chinese American, of the name of Bruce Lee. And they became good friends. And actually, he was the one that introduced Bruce Lee to a lot of the Hollywood, you know, celebrities and all the people back in those days, because he was also, he became a disciple of the late Blake Edwards, none other. Yes, sir. So we see the connection there with the, you know, the Pink Panther movies and all that stuff. So anyway, I'm saying too much, and it's not, I'm not the one who should be saying this, right? But before we go to him, let me just say that we are going live through our Facebook page, Master Frank Soto Kinetic Dragon, right? Yes, so please like that, follow the page. That really helps us a lot. We are also going live on our YouTube channel, The Kinetic Dragon, right? Just look for The Kinetic Dragon. Yes, look for it and you'll find it there. And also, please follow or subscribe to the channel and click on the little bell so you get those notifications. We're also going live through the Internacional with a Z because it's in Espanol, International Hall of Fame of Argentina. Yes, sir. So we have a lot of people that see us. Actually, we said there it is. International Hall of Fame says, "Salud, maestro." Big hug from Argentina. Saludos hasta Argentina. Gracias. So let's bring in the man of the hour, the one and only. Yes, sir. Tom Bleecker. Hello, sir.
Hello, and thank you for having me. It's good to be with you.
I hope it was a good intro for you, sir.
Well, I hope I can live up to all of that.
Well, you have. So I'm just saying the facts, sir. So thank you. It is an honor to have you here on the show, sir. I'm very, very excited for this interview, you know, because this is just wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you for asking me.
Well, we have people saying hello, if you don't mind. Maestro Angelo Colado, hello to you and Mr. Tom Bleecker. Salute. Thank you, sir. Okay. International Hall of Fame says, salute, maestros, in the day of the country in Argentina from the cultured Chinese house of Santa Fe, Argentina. Big hug from Sifu Ernesto Colbrenner. Thank you, sir. Maestro Juan Martín Álvarez says, salud, salud, saludos. Jose Antonio Olmos Gonzalez, excellent evening, afternoon, sorry, big hug. Maestro Soto and Master Bleecker, happy day of the country for our Argentinian brothers. Thank you. Gracias.
Thank you.
Mastermind says, salute, everyone. Grandmaster Jerry Arrechea, best regards, Frank and Tom. I have read Unsettled Matters many times. Wow, thank you. Saludos. Sergio Correa, regards from Chile, Mr. Bleecker. Saludos, maestro. Gracias. So, every time I have a new personality in the show like yourself, sir, I ask if you could briefly give us, you know, share a little bit of your history when you started up today, you know, just for people that don't have the honor or the pleasure of knowing you, that they can know about you a little bit, please.
Sure. I actually started in at the La Cienega School shortly before the Santa Monica School. We moved over and it came into existence. It was 1962 and it was in the summer. I started in the third month of the summer, and the first 2 months of the summer, I hid out from a bully. I had a bully in high school, a senior, who said that every time he saw me that summer, he was going to kick my rear end. It wasn't a word he used. And he didn't care if it was at the beach, at the bowling alley, the movie, or a party, or just walking down the street. He was going to kick my rear end. And I believed him, and I was afraid of him. I wasn't so much afraid about being beat up, you know, taking the pain of being beat up. I was afraid of the real humiliation that as kids,
right,
we suffer when we lose a fight in front of all of our friends and our peers. So I ducked this guy for 2 months. And in the third month, I said to myself, if I duck this guy, I'm going to be ducking guys like him for the rest of my life. And I got a phone book and I looked up, I don't know what it was, a judo. I don't think, you know, karate was in the phone book then. And there was a La Cienega school under Ed Parker, and I drove down there and I signed up. I paid my $20. I got my gi and I signed up.
Wow.
I took my first lesson from Sterling Peacock. At that time, Chuck Sullivan was a brown belt. Ed Parker was a third degree and the only black belt in the system. And I stayed there. We trained there. This is Scott Loring that's on the screen. And this is Sterling Peacock on the left. He was a Golden Gloves boxer and one fierce son of a gun. And back in those days, I was actually sparring in my first lessons, not the students, just Sterling. He was a Golden Gloves boxer and pretty fearless. Then we moved over to the Santa Monica School by the freeway. We were there for a while, and then that's when the Internationals, the first International. Then we moved across the street behind the Snackorama. That then became kind of known as the West LA School.
Right.
And from there, you know, the history of the school is pretty much on its own. It's now the legacy of the West LA School is now pretty much in the hands of Brian Hawkins. And I think he's done an exceptionally fine job.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned Larry Tatum. I think Larry Tatum is one of the finest Kenpoists we have. He's done a tremendous amount to help the Pasadena area. He originally came from Pasadena, but he's now has quite an international following. So you've got a really fine instructor. I admire Larry Tatum quite a bit.
Nice. So you started when you were 16 years old because you were, you know, forced by a bully or being bullied by this guy. And what happened after you started, you know, getting your lessons and fighting, you know, Mr. Peacock and all those guys, and training with those monsters? I mean, they were so young, but they were already monsters in the art, if you know what I mean, in a good term. What happened? Did you gain a lot of confidence? Did you face that man that was bullying you? Did you have to, or just?
My mindset changed tremendously when I started the martial arts. I mean, it really did. And back then, I was probably one of the few kids, minors anyway, under the age of 18 who were training. There was Jimmy Doherty, and there was a handful of them, but mainly adults. The ones that were in my class, Big John Walker, and Phil Iaconelli, who is still a good friend of mine. He's on Facebook. He was a 3-tipper then. He's on Facebook. He's in his 80s. But they were adults, so I was sparring with adults. So you can imagine if you get used to sparring with adults, what someone my own age would feel to me. But what happened was, it wasn't long thereafter when we moved over to Santa Monica by the freeway that I started teaching and helping with the instruction. And my friends would come down to see me at the school. My high school friends would come down in the evening and watch me. So I guess word circulated around that this guy's no fool. And of course, by then I was gaining some muscle and gaining some weight and all that. I did finally run into this fellow. His first name was Ron. I'll leave his last name out. But I did, a couple of years later, I ran into him in a supermarket. And by that time, I might have been a black belt. I certainly was a brown belt, but I may have been a black belt. And I saw him over in the market. He was pushing a market cart. And I walked over to him. And I said, "Hey, aren't you Ron?" In his last name. He said, "Yeah." I said, "You may remember me from school, Tom Bleecker." And you could see the blood just drain from his face. I mean, he thought he'd seen a ghost. And I was bigger then, and he seemed a lot smaller then. And he looked at me like, well, he said, "Yes, I remember you." I said, "Well, it's great to see you, Ron. How's life been treating you?" And he said, "Oh, good. And you?" I said, "Oh, really good." So it's nice seeing you again, and enjoy yourself, and walked away from him. That was it.
It reminds me of this movie, The Ghost and the Darkness. Was that movie with Michael Douglas when he tells the story of the bully? Yeah. He said, "I got bigger."
Yeah. That's true.
That's nice. Well, and could you share a little bit? How was the environment and the energy back in those days? Because, well, I started in Kenpo. In the martial arts, I started in '84, but in Kenpo, I started in '94 after Mr. Parker's passing. So a lot of us are not familiar with the energy and especially in those years, in the beginning of all of this, martial arts in America, and not just Kenpo, but everything that all those fine gentlemen created without knowing. I don't think they could see what was going to happen, right?
Sure.
So how was the environment back then? What was the energy that you felt in the studio?
I think Dave Hebler has mentioned several times that it was and also Chuck Sullivan, and they are both my seniors, both of them.
Right.
And they talked about how we were studying an exotic art. And back then, no one really had seen much at all. I mean, James Cagney had a thing in his mouth, and the whole thing was a judo chop. I mean, that was pretty much it. There was only 3 schools in LA. It was a Shotokan school, Jerry Packard, and I think that was about it. And so I mean, it was like studying an exotic art. I mean, I'd never seen anything like it. And in those days, we were asked to sign a confidentiality that we would not teach anybody outside of our immediate family. So that even made it more exotic. It was like a secret society.
Right.
But what was really different then, in my view and my experience, is that I think we were much closer then. We didn't have the formalities that exist now today in many of the schools. We were all on a first name basis. And we all partied together. I still remember, as if it was yesterday, the great parties at Chuck Sullivan's house. And we used to go down there on Saturday nights. Frequently had parties down there, and there was drinking and smoking and card playing. He had a crap table in the middle, and there's Chuck. And I mean, we were all on a first name basis, and we were like family. I mean, really family. Steve Sanders, Mohammed. And by the way, I'll tell you later about this story about Steve. Just remind me about Steve. So there was a closeness, there was a camaraderie together. We were like brothers. We were, at least I had that feeling. And we trained a lot harder in the basics. We didn't have the material that we have now in Kenpo. And so we trained a tremendous amount on drilling basics and then running the line, doing the forms and sparring. That was pretty much it. But we had strong basics back then. And nowadays, if somebody signs up and they want to make a bet, they have a tremendous amount of material to learn. And so it's a matter of, you only have so many hours in the day when you're working out. And so where do you put your time? You put your time in learning the material you're going to be tested on, you know?
And why the confidentiality? Why keep it? What was the purpose behind that?
You know, I don't know for certain, but my guess is that when I signed up was just right after the split with Jimmy Woo. And I think that Mr. Parker was very concerned about, he really wanted to keep all of his students together and tight-knit and close. And I know he was very opposed to us going to other schools and even sitting in the waiting room and watching. That was something you just was very discouraged. He didn't say we couldn't do it. Right. But we were discouraged from doing that. Oh, at that time in Hollywood Boulevard, Bruce Tegner had a school. That was another one.
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't go to another school. I think I don't know. I might have gone and looked at Nishiyama School, the Shotokan School on Olympic Boulevard, which was quite a school. It may still be there. I don't know. But we were discouraged from wandering. And I think that confidentiality was part of keeping us as a close family. That's my guess. I don't know that for certain.
I've heard that Nishiyama was a rival of Mr. Parker, that they had this rivalry. That's what I've heard. I don't know.
It's possible, but if it's possible because initially, if you look at our roots and look at what we were doing in the 60s, our style was very Shotokan. If you look at the stances, they were very Shotokan. The hip, the fist was chambered on the hip. We were you look at some original stances of Ed Parker, and they were a Shotokan stance. So initially, I think when Mr. Parker started going to San Francisco and being this is Larry Hartzell, by the way, who started, that's the Santa Monica School next to the freeway. And that's Larry Hartzell, who came in during the summer, maybe it was late fall, I think. No, it had to be in the summer because I've got 3 tips on. So this would have been in early summer of 64. Anyway, Nishiyama, I think what happened was that Ed Parker started branching away from Shotokan, and he had to find ways to answer the Shotokan opponent. And that's why we have people initially attacking us with a step-through lockout punch, because that's what Shotokan did. And people say, well, that's not very realistic that somebody would do that. And well, it isn't. But that's what we were training against, because that's what our demonstrations were. It was against a Shotokan man that stepped in with a lockout punch, and then we moved 5 count or whatever we were doing. So I think maybe the fact that he was branching away from his Shotokan roots from Matosi might have caused some friction between them. I don't recall Ed Parker ever bad-mouthing Nishiyama. And of course, Nishiyama's one of his great students was Oshima, who is still training today, I think.
Wow.
Very gifted martial art, and a close friend of Ed Parker's.
Nice. Yeah, I'm just I never judge things, especially from the past, because we don't have the context. So I'm trying to look for the context here. That's why I'm asking. No politics intended or anything like that.
No, I understand, and I remember a tremendous amount back then, but some of it I have to. I wasn't really privy to the information that I could say for certain. I'm only
right. And then you have the first internationals.
Yeah.
So I bet that was something to witness. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I heard about it in the Santa Monica School that there was going to be this tournament in Long Beach, and all we were told was that if you had a gi and you were above ground and you were breathing and you weren't on in the emergency ward somewhere, you showed up there with your gi, with your belt, with your $5 entry fee, and you fought. And Ed Parker was certain that he wanted, and was sure that he used to put all of his best fighters in and even the intermediates in. I entered as a heavyweight brown belt division. I did very well. I got up into the finals, and the guy that beat me went on to win that division. But that was one heck of a weekend. And it was, if you want to read a good accounting of that, read Chuck Sullivan's profile in the International Journey. He was very involved in those first internationals, and he has a great recollection of what went on. But that was the whole idea is, Ed Parker wanted to win as many trophies as possible. And he has the best fighters out there, the ones that were really, this is the book here that has Chuck Sullivan's recollections of the international journey in that book.
Right. Right. And then you met Bruce Lee.
Well, I met Bruce Lee before the internationals. He was coming into the Santa Monica school. Nice. He came in with James Lee and a couple of other times. I didn't know who he was. There was only a handful of people who knew him. Dan Inosanto, Ed Parker, of course, knew him, but a handful of people. But I remember when I didn't meet him, but I was present when he was there talking. I was kind of on the sidelines, and I recall vividly how fast he was. I mean, his speed was phenomenal. It's very hard to even see his hands move. But what impressed me about him was his and Mr. Parker mentions this. I think he's mentioned this several times, that Bruce Lee's back fist used to pop in the air. I mean, you could literally hear it pop in the air as it came almost like I don't want to say a sonic boom, but there was something that was causing that hand of his to pop in the air. I'd never seen anybody else do that. It wasn't until later that I was on the receiving end of his punches and kicks and holding pads for him, and when he kicked me one time with a kick shield, and that I felt the power that he had. He was a phenomenal. His speed and power was something to reckon with. There was no question about it.
Wow. And then you got involved in. You started getting involved with Hollywood, with all this. You started your career and all that. How did that happen?
Well, I grew up in Brentwood, and as I talk about in my background in my book, I was going to school with a lot of Hollywood celebrities, with the children of the Hollywood celebrities. I had no idea who they were. They were just friends of mine. I dated Tina Sinatra at the time, and I knew the name, but Frank Sinatra didn't mean a whole lot to me. It meant something to my father, but not to me. Right. And I just a lot of celebrity. I made my first Hollywood television appearance at the age of 13. I was on The Real McCoys. You're probably too young to remember that series, but it starred Walter Brennan, and it was The Real McCoys. It was a half-hour show, and that was my first. I think I was 13 years old. And after that, I was just very involved with Hollywood people, not that really just by accident. I mean, it wasn't anything I was seeking out. I was engaged to for some time, Diane Linkletter, who was Art Linkletter's daughter. And we used to go to the Valley Music Theater, the theater in the Round, to watch live theater. And there were just a lot of celebrities there as well. Ed Parker and his wife used to go with us several occasions, went there and watched Oklahoma and Seven Brides for Seven Brothers and a lot of the live there. And we went out to eat before that at the Sportsman's Lodge. And those were great evenings. Here's the Julie Andrews Hour. This is a show that I did. Blake Edwards called me one afternoon and said he'd like me to go down to the ABC studios to tape Julie's show, to do the introduction. And he asked me to get some people with me. I took Chuck Norris and I took John Natividad, mainly because Tony Sharmali, who was the dance choreographer, wanted people who could do really high kicks. And I initially had to ask Chuck Sullivan to come because he was very good at, that's me with, I don't know who that is, probably Steve Walton. Chuck Sullivan was very, very good at high kicks, but he was working full time. He couldn't go. And so I wound up called Chuck Norris because I know they were good at kicks. You know, Tank Trudeau is real good kickers. And John Natitavad, his kicks are phenomenal. So we went. There were 5 of us. Went and did the show. And it was, I think it might have been the first time that Kenpo was seen to that degree on network television. It played really well.
That actually looks really nice.
Oh, it was a great time. We had a marvelous time. The only, well, it all went well. I mean, we didn't have a long time to rehearse it, but it was wonderful. What we did was we did all of that, what you were seeing, while Julie walked among us singing "Something's Gotta Give."
Gotta give.
Yeah. It's great talent. Yeah.
That's good. So, and then you became a writer, and then there was this. Mr. Parker also got involved in Hollywood and did a lot of stuff back in those days, right?
Yeah, he was involved in Hollywood. This was taken right before the tribute in his backyard. He was involved with what was the show for Eddie's father was one. He did that wonderful appearance at Desilu Studios, which is where they were filming The Real McCoys. And he did that wonderful thing with Lou Capolo. Lou Capolo, incidentally, was the other fellow in that, and he was the manager of the La Cienega School. A marvelous guy. He was a New York radio disc jockey. He would come to Los Angeles to break into the entertainment business. Wonderful guy, great sense of humor. Lou, I hope he's still alive today and having a great life.
Here's a good picture.
Yeah, there's Bob Loja. We did a series together called The Ferret, and this was at Blake Edwards' studio, Laird Studios at the time. And my assignment was to teach Bob martial arts so that he could use it in the series The Ferret, mainly in the pilot movie. And Bob was a wonderful student and just a marvelous human being, very caring, wonderful, wonderful man. I really enjoyed my time with him.
You have authored a lot of different books from different martial artists like Benny the Jet Urquidez and Donnie,
Williams?
Donnie Williams, the Black Karate Federation guy, and Bruce Lee, of course, and the Journeys, the book trilogy, and all that. What made you do that? Writing about martial artists and martial arts? Was it combining your two passions, or you?
There was also William Chung, who was senior to Bruce Lee. I did his life story as well.
Right, that's right.
And yeah, there he is, and also a wonderful man and a very extremely talented Wing Chun practitioner and teacher. I was around the time that I did the tribute, I was still involved with screen and television. That's what I was doing, and it was around that time that I had re-met Linda Lee, Bruce's widow, who came to the tribute, and she asked if she could meet me for dinner on Friday. She wanted to talk to me about it. I said, fine, I'd love to rekindle our friendship together. And she asked me if I would help her write the Bruce Lee story, which was the foundation for the movie Dragon. And I accepted. So that was the first book that I wrote was the Bruce Lee story that I co-wrote with her. And after that, I just kind of enjoyed writing books. I kind of was getting tired of Hollywood. It's a tough business. And so I decided I would do that. And then shortly after that, I wrote Unsettled Matters, which was my second book on Bruce. And then after that, I just kept at it. I've written now, I don't know, nearly 20 books or something.
Nice. Yeah, we have a list here on your website. If anybody wants to see more, I suggest that you go to Mr. Bleecker's website, tombleecker.com. You see it right here on the screen. And
make sure you put the C in my name. A lot of people leave the C out. You won't get anywhere without the C. Bleecker.
I did that, didn't I?
Oh no, I'm saying anybody else who's going, that they make sure they put the C in my name.
Okay.
Somebody came up with
It's
something.
there. It's there. I was checking them. Oh my
Oh
God.
no, yeah. Somebody made a great observation. If you look at my name, how it's spelled down in the lower right corner there, somebody made a great observation, and they put my name vertically, and they put B and then Lee and then the C and then Ker, and they spelled out Bruce Lee Seeker. How did anybody see that? But,
That's amazing.
You could make Bruce Lee Seeker out of it. That was pretty interesting.
It is. You mentioned you were going to share. I'm sorry, about a story about Steve Sanders, now Steve Mohammed.
Oh yeah. When I got my black belt, it was in October of 1965. Albert Conejo filmed that ceremony, and it wasn't only mine. It was a lot of people were getting their belts that night. One was Terry Arnell. There was a number of them that were receiving, but I was the only person receiving a black belt. I was the first black belt. I was the first brown belt and first black belt in the West LA Legacy. Wow. And so Albert filmed it, and I knew he'd filmed it. So from 1965 until just a few years ago, whenever I would see him, I would say, Albert, that film that you took, because he told me he still had it, but he always said, oh, it's in my garage somewhere. It's packed away in boxes. I don't know where it is. And I just gave up. I said, I'm not going to ask him anymore. I get tired of it. He always backdoors me. So I'll find. Well, I was at, I was at Brian Hawkins' legacy dinner, I think it was. And Albert walked in, and he walked over to me and said, hey, I was going to, I just thought I'd mention to you about that film. I thought, oh, here it comes. He's looking for it. He said, I have a copy of it, and here it is. And wow. he gave me a DVD with that. And now, mind you, we're like decades later.
Right.
And I think, oh man, when I get home, I want to see this thing. Well, that DVD, that film had pictures of Scott Loring. Scott Loring, by the way, was probably the fiercest fighter that Ed Parker had back then. Leonard Mao was pretty well known, but Scott Loring was somebody. Ed Parker told me one time that he thought that Scott Loring would be as great as Joe Louis, and I think he just might well have been. But Scott Loring is seen in that, and a lot of the old timers are seen in that. But there was a guy that got his brown belt that night, and it was Steve Sanders. It was Steve Mohammed. And so when I went to a seminar several years ago, and he was present, and I gave a talk at the podium, I said to Steve, I said this, and I said, and there's another person that's on this DVD, and guess who that is? And I pointed to Steve, and I said, it's you, Steve. And he just looked at me like, really? So I gave him a copy of that DVD. I said, you get home, you look at this, you'll see, you get your brown belt on that same night.
Wow. Yeah. Nice.
And rare find. That video may be on my YouTube. I'm not sure, but I have the video. I should probably put it up somewhere.
That's a good piece of history right there. Yes.
Well, it's a Super 8 or 8mm Super 8. It's kind of hard to see, but you can tell who's who there. And Bob Cook is in that video also. Bob Cook, by the way, went on to win the 1964 Internationals white belt division, heavyweight white, in 3 overtimes, fighting one of Chuck Norris's top new students named Chris Wells. And Bob Cook went on to get his black belt from Ed Parker, and then he went on to train with Jimmy Wu for many, many years. He's a very, very talented Tai Chi man. I think he lives in up north, up in the Northwest somewhere. Really a nice guy and very talented.
Nice. Well, we have a lot of people saying hello. If you don't mind, let's.
Oh,
Portinho Colatina, Genibaldo Porto Portinho Colatina, Espírito Santo, Brazil.
Thank you.
Diego Andrés Salbucci, salud maestros from Buenos Aires. Portinho said, os. Luis Gonzalez, congratulations. Sorry for my bad English. Salud from Argentina. That's fine. Mr. Edward Chavez, hello, sir, from Arizona.
Arizona. All right. Hello.
Chris Lilland, Havas, hello to the both of you from Denmark. I had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Bleecker at one of Mr. Eddie Downey's European Kenpo camps in Ireland.
That was a great weekend.
Nice, nice. Let's see. Maria Lopez, great show. Salud from Buenos Aires.
Hello.
David Gigliotti. Hello, Mr. Bleecker. Looking good, sir. Full salute.
One of the honorees in Journey Book 3, by the way.
Nice, nice. Mr. Anthony Angulo. Got some poor quality reception out here, but good afternoon. Sorry about that, man. Okay, let's see. Hold on. Mr. William Larry Congaika. Hello, Mr. Soto and Mr. Bleecker. Saludo. Salud. Okay. Jerry Arrechea says, why so many students of Parker ranks fled to train under Bruce Lee? Well, that was the second split, right?
Well, there weren't that many. I mean, over time, that number seems to have increased a tremendous amount. There weren't a whole lot, and I wouldn't say they fled. I think they were very interested in learning what Bruce was teaching. Right. And there was, I know Dan Inosanto went, Steve Golden went, Larry Poteet went, but there may have been one or two others, but there certainly wasn't an exodus. And some of those people came back and they still remain friends with Ed Parker and trained with him. Oh, Larry Hartzell was another one who went and trained with him. But there certainly wasn't an exodus. I trained with him myself for a while. I trained private lessons with him at the Barrington Plaza, where I got him an apartment in a horrendous afternoon. There's a story for you. When he got his apartment at the Barrington, and then when his school at college, he had trained there for a short time, and then at his home in Bel Air. The story about Bruce and the Barrington, he was living in a small house in either Culver City or Palms. Small little house with Brandon and Linda. And I had moved into the Barrington Plaza, which was a very luxurious apartment building on Wilshire Boulevard. But I had moved in there under script, which was like monopoly money. You could buy a discount script. You could get like 60 cents on the dollar. So they were accepting script for rent. So I got a 40% discount. Nice. And I had a roommate, so we moved into a tiny apartment and we could barely make the rent. But I got to know the owner of the building, Don Carnes, very well. And Carnes was training at Ed Parker's. So I went to Don one time and I said, listen, can you get an apartment for Bruce Lee at the Barrington? He's got his wife and his kid. He said, yeah, have him come by and talk to Stan Riker, who's the manager, and he's in the office. He said, have him come by. So we made an appointment to come by, and I come in there, and Bruce finally walks into the main lobby by himself, and I'm standing talking to Riker, and I said, oh, thank God he's here, because I thought it was a no-show. And I say to Riker, I'd like you to meet, Bruce Lee, and it's Riker, and I understand you have an apartment. He said, well, no, we don't have any apartments. We're full up. And I looked at him like, what? You had him come all this way? I had him come all this way to hear this? So then I said, no, I don't think you understand something. Don said you had. He said, well, I don't know. He said, this is the guy. I said, this is the one Don might have mentioned to you. He's a kung fu guy. He said, oh, is this a guy that rips phone books or something like that? Well, that was it. And Bruce said, oh, no, I don't rip phone books. He said, do you have a phone book? Now, that time, Don Carnes walked in. And I said, oh, Don. And Don said, oh, this is Mr. Lee. Man. Oh, yeah, this is the guy. So Bruce said, put this on your chest. And Riker put it on his chest. And Riker was about 6'4", a big guy from New York. I mean, this guy was massive. And Bruce said, are you ready, man? And he put his fingertips on that phone book. And Riker said, yeah, I don't. Oh, first of all, he said, I suppose you're going to rip those in half. I have a cousin that does that. No. Put his finger on it, and he put that 1-inch punch, which most people feel is a push, and probably rightfully so. Riker went flying. I mean, this guy went flying. The book went into the lobby. Riker went across the room and slammed into a bunch of file cabinets. I mean, I thought he was really hurt. Bruce was really pissed off that he did that way. And he sent him airborne. And Riker came back and he got him a 1-bedroom. Well, I carried with Bruce. We took all of his books and his weights and everything up to his new apartment, a 1-bedroom. Took about three hours to get all that stuff up there. And Bruce walked in, he looks around, he says, "Oh, way too small. We need a bigger apartment." He said, "Where's Stan Riker?" I said, "What? You're going to go back there?" He went down to Stan Riker, and an hour later, we were moving his stuff into a 2-bedroom apartment. So that was the story about Bruce and the Barrington. And he stayed there for a number of months, and we all got thrown out because the FHA foreclosed. And it's a long story, but we all had to leave.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Mr. Tony Capone. Hello, Mr. Bleecker. Hello, sir.
I love your Facebook posts.
Nice, nice. Marcel De Jong. Great to see you, Tom. Always interesting to hear all those stories about the old times at the IKCs and about Bruce Lee.
I really want to come out to his country sometime. That's my homeland.
Nice. Merv Orman. Hello, sir. Says, interesting interview. As always, salute. Thank you, sir. Okay. Michael Miller. Great interview, my friend. Tom Bleecker is the real deal. I'm honored to know him. Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Good to see you.
Okay, let's see. Vladimir da Silva Javier, saludos from Brazil, maestros. Thank you, sir. Saludos. Douglas Ferraz says saludos from desde Brazil, from Brazil.
Around the world.
Edward Chavez says, great to hear events with Bruce Lee. Thank you for sharing, sir. Bruce Lee was my inspiration to learn nunchucks.
My pleasure.
Mr. Jerry Arechea asks, what would you say to MMA fighters who belittle Bruce Lee's actual combat skills?
Well, unfortunately, Bruce never competed, and that's not to say he would not have done very well. Personally, I think Bruce would have done extremely well in competition, mainly because he was such a craftsman. And he had a unique talent at recognizing a person's weakness instantly. And with his speed and his power, I think he would have been another Carlos Bunda. I think he would have done extremely well, but unfortunately, we'll never know because he didn't compete. So, but I personally think he would have done very well. I don't know what his ground game was. There are really two things about him. First of all, I don't know what his ground. No one knows what his ground game was. He worked with Gene LaBelle a little bit, but not to the degree that the Gracies could have handled him. And the second one, we don't know whether or not he could actually take a punch. And there was talk that he had kind of a weak jaw. I don't know if there's any truth to that. I know if you ever hit him, he got furious. You just knew that don't ever hit him by mistake, or he would get very angry. But so there was a question of whether or not he could take a punch, and the only way you find that out is if he fights. And you look at some guy like Benny Urquidez, who could take a punch. I mean, he got hit, and I think he went down a few times, but he was never in a standing 8 ever. I mean, Benny he was a real fighter who had a tremendous stamina, and he could take a punch. He could take a punch. So, but I think Bruce would have done very well, really.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, sir. Hold on. Let's see. Rodolfo Kunzman says, good interview. Full salute from Chile.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we have some photos that I want to share here. Let's see. Okay, here's a big group photo. You're right there in the corner with the camera.
Yeah, I'm trying. This is at Bob White's school, I think, isn't it? Is that where this is? I don't know. I see. It's
something with Mr. Trejo because he's right in the middle. I think it was like a tribute or something to him.
Oh, I know what this is. I think this might have been a medical fundraiser for him.
Yeah, I think so.
A number of fundraisers for Frank. Frank and I were very, very close. Frank and I roomed together for a while. We were kind of known as the Oscar and Felix, the odd couple. We were quite a team together. And my wife really liked Frank a lot because my wife is, as many people know, Hispanic, and so she really liked Frank a lot. And we used to go to his convalescent home, which is not far from where we live. We'd go there on Christmas Eve and his birthday and all. And I really did have a great love for Frank. And so I did a number of medical seminars for him, fundraisers.
Nice. Let's see. We have another picture here. I think it was a Hall of Famer. Is it?
Yeah, this was the Masters Hall of Fame that night. With those were the inductees. Oh no, wait! I'm sorry. Bob White wasn't an inductee, or neither was John. Those they were had already been inducted. So, no, Steve LaBounty and everybody to the right was an inductee. Me and Paul Dye, but Bob White was already an inductee, and I believe also John Sepulveda was an inductee. I'm not sure about Ron Sanchez. He might have been inducted that night. I don't know.
Nice. Let's see. We got more pictures here. Let me get. There we go.
Oh, this was Ireland. This was someone had mentioned the camp in Ireland, and this is what this was. We had actually gone out there to debut the International Journey that was debuted at Eddie's camp that year. I'm not sure what year that was, a number of years ago, but we had well, that's the first Journey book, and then the other one is Up Over My Head.
Yes.
And I'm talking about at that time there were only 2 books done on Journey, and the third one was done a couple of years ago.
Okay. And the third one is this one, right?
So, yeah, that's the third of the trilogy. And
okay. And this is the first one, and this is the first crew.
Yeah, this is the first team, actually the team that did it. Joe Himes and I worked on the writing, and Steve Walton did 2 chapters in that book, the Elvis chapter and the history chapter. And then, of course, Edmund did the book design, and he also did the cover. His cover, there's a wonderful story about his cover. He came up to me. I had tried to put the cover together myself, and I showed him what I had. I think I had 3 or 4 different types, and I thought they were pretty good. And then he looked at me and said, "Well, they're all right." I said, "Really?" Yeah. He said, "What is it that you envision anyway in the cover of this book?" And I said, "Well, what I envision is a martial arts student, a Kenpoist, starting into the desert. And there's a mountaintop in the distance. There's a mountaintop in the distance, or he has to go up somewhere in the distance. And he has to go through a lot of dangers to get to that mountain, to reach his goal. And it's the journey of going through the dangers. And if you look at the book, there's a tiger on one side, there's an over here. So there's danger in there. You get the feeling. And in the end, he reaches the goal. I guess that's what Edmund thought was the sun of the Enlightenment. And off he went. He said, "Well, thanks," and off he went. I didn't hear from him for a while. And then the next time I saw him, he said, "Well, I've done the cover." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Here it is. What do you think?" And I said, "What? Wow." He hit an absolute grand slam home run with that cover. It's what I was I'm so glad he poo-pooed my versions, because Edmund is one of the most talented artists I've ever known. He did the cover of my autobiography, by the way. That he did that cover, which I have my own understanding as to what that cover is about. This cover is different. In the first Journey book, he's the martial artist is starting in the front, and he's climbing the mountain. The goal is the mountaintop, to reach the mountaintop. And I believe we all have I believe I do, and others have a goal in Kenpo, and that was to reach the top of the mountain, which for me was a black belt. But once you reach the top of the mountain, you've gone through all of your fears and all of your roadblocks and all of your stumbling blocks and everything that's holding you back in life. You go through that to get to the top of the mountain. And when you reach the top of the mountain, you can look down then into the valley, which is what you're supposed to be, which is your destiny, which are all the wonderment of what your life can become. But until you go through that desert and that danger and that process of growth to reach the top of the mountain, you cannot get into the valley. And so that's why my story was Journey Beyond the Mountaintop. This is after I made black belt and was able to get rid of my fear and the things that were causing me not to grow in my life. And so I think Edmund did a great job. And when I told him that, this is what he did. So this is me on the top of the mountain looking down into the valley. It's the opposite. It's the second and final stage of the first journey book.
And that being said and explained, it was Steve Jobs that says you cannot connect the dots into the future. You can only connect the dots in the past of what you have done, right? And you being on top of that mountain, being a successful man that have had a successful life, with its ups and downs and everything. How did Kenpo help you in that journey?
Well, when I reached the top of the mountain, I was not a successful. I would not have considered myself a successful person. Okay. I would have considered myself that I had reached a stage in my life where I now had the opportunity to expand and all of the of my opportunities that I could take them up. When I was young, I was a very troubled child. I came from a highly dysfunctional childhood. And I was a stutterer in school. I stuttered horribly. They'd call me to read, and I would just die 1,000 deaths. And I was a very troubled child. I was in juvenile hall when I did Benny Arcadius. He was surprised to hear that I could spend time in juvenile hall in the same D unit that he was in when he was years later, because he'd also had some problems in his youth. And so I had a tremendous amount of fear, and I had all those self-image and low self-confidence. All of those things were stopping me from ever doing anything. I think if I would have not finished Kenpo, I don't know what would have happened to my life. I probably would have had a job doing something alone somewhere, away from people and society. I don't know. I don't think I would have been able to do much of anything. Kenpo was the first thing that I ever completed, my black belt. I was thrown out of high school. I wasn't suspended. I've been suspended a few times, but I was expelled. And my parents had heard about people being suspended, but I don't know if anybody had been. My father said, expelled? That's it? I said, yeah, that's it. I'm out. Can't go back. This is in the 12th grade. Out. You're finished. So my black belt was the first thing that I had actually completed. And if it had not been for that, I don't think I would have ever completed a screenplay or a book.
Nice. So you do have a lot to be grateful to that old bully, Ron.
Oh, I do, yes.
He pushed you to go there, right?
Yeah, I have no idea at the time what the great favor he was doing for me.
Wow, amazing. So you can say that being on top of the mountain is to be able to see the options that are there for you?
Yeah, it's the beginning. It's really the beginning of, I believe, what someone's, if you want to call it their destiny, or what we want to call the opportunities that we're given in life. It doesn't mean that problems stop there. It just means that you now have gotten through the major roadblocks where you can now see what's there for you. And with the lack of fear and the confidence I had, I was able to accept a writing assignment from Blake Edwards, the first writing assignment from Blake Edwards in 1970. I made my first movie with him in 1970, and then in 71, I started a career as an actor with Jim Coburn in the Carey treatment. But I was so terrified that my stuttering would come back. And in a script, an actor, you can't change the dialogue. You can't. If you stutter, you know that if you have a big vocabulary, if you are going to come up on a word you're going to stutter on, you just switch the word. You just get another word. Well, you can't do that when you're shooting a movie. The director says, "Wait a minute, it doesn't say that." I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I must have been." So I was so nervous. But fortunately, the part I was playing was an orderly that got caught with marijuana, and I was chased all over a hospital. And then when they got me in cuffs and they handed me, I was a nervous wreck. So the fact that I appeared as a nervous wreck, I wasn't acting. And when they ran the daily, I said, God, you did a great job. I mean, you realized I wasn't acting. I was scared to death. And that was the last. I said, I don't want any more of this. I'll be a writer. I can be left alone.
Right. Wow.
That clip, by the way, is on my YouTube channel. I think it's on there. It's called the Carey treatment. It's in a hospital. I'm an orderly in a hospital. Chased me all over the place. Then I have one-on-one dialogue with Jim Comer, who, by the way, I had a great time with him on that show. Go down a little bit. Let me see. I can't think it's near. Here it is. It's in the lower. There it is. That's it. That's Jim, and then I'll come up right behind him, and then they go to frisk me. What's happened is they're missing morphine in the hospital, so they have this shakedown. That's me right there in the far left. They have this shakedown going on, and I happen to have marijuana on me, and I got stuck in this line, and they go to shake me down. I say, the hell with this, and I take off. I actually cut my eye on this, and I got an extra $500 because somebody poked me in the eye.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. 20-year-old nitwit.
Oh, that's the cut right there. Wow.
Yeah.
So that was real.
Oh, yeah. And he is funny because he turns him around here and you didn't know what to say. So this is an extra here. And he says, well, how are you? And she got an extra $1,000 because he did that. That wasn't in the script. And then I say, hold on. Now, what was funny about that was for months afterwards, people would stop me in the street, say, hey, aren't you the guy that got busted for marijuana in that movie? Yeah, I was.
Nice. Well, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, sir.
Oh, they can write to my Gmail, tombleecker@gmail.com, or they can, I'm on Facebook, or they can go to my website. There's a contact on my website. And any one of those I'd be happy to. And by the way, if anybody's interested in my autobiography, I want to send for just a second a shout out to Michael Miller, who helped me with this book. I've been writing this book for some time, but I was got into a problem when I restarted it. My wife, this is when my wife had her eyesight problem and lost the sight of one of her eyes and had surgery on, and I couldn't do all of the work. So I brought in Michael, who was a tremendous help on this book and helped me put this book together. But if you're interested in a copy of that, in an inscribed copy of it, you can get on Amazon, whatever. But feel free to write to me. I'll be more than happy to inscribe a copy to you.
Okay, so there's the website. And
yeah,
then we have.
That's my wife, Lourdes.
Okay. Well, anything you want to add, sir? We are already out of time.
No, just thank you for having me. I hope it's been worth your time and the time of those who have tuned in and the time for people who will watch it later. It's been a real honor for me to be asked to be here. And I think, as I told you earlier, I think you're doing an excellent job with this program. I've known a lot of interviewers in my day, myself being one of them, and you're really kind of a natural. You're really good at it. And I hope you have hundreds more that you'll interview. And I did recommend one of them to you that I hope you'll get together with.
Yes, sir. I will. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Before we go, we have some comments. Mr. Frank Bigoriuk says, hi, Brother Frank. Hello. I bought Mr. Bleecker book early this year. And have to say his life story is wonderful. God has a wonderful purpose in his life. My respect in regards to Mr. Bleecker and his family.
Thank you.
Nice. Mark Sigel. Hello, Mr. Bleecker. I really enjoy Unsettled Matters and the first journey. Nice.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. Grace Habas. Thank you, Mr. Soto and Mr. Bleecker, for a great interview. Thank you. Well, thank you so much, sir. Of course, I really enjoyed this hour. This was fantastic. I wish we had more time. You know, it's amazing that we can go back in history, back in time, and know a little bit more of what happened in around that era, and we can understand more where is it that we are at, and where is it that we can go from here.
Well, I'm glad to be a part of that. I would have never thought nearly 60 years ago that at the age of 75 as a great-grandfather that I would be talking about the history of Kenpo to a degree on the internet, of all things, going out all over the world. So what a wonderful thing this is, to be able to reach out to people and share what we know, what we've experienced.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you again.
Thank
you
you
so much.
Thank you.
And thank everybody that watched the show. Mr. Arachea says thanks for sharing, Tom.
Thank you.
And well, you guys have a great day. May I remind you, tomorrow we have in Café y Artes Marciales Master Roberto Vidal from Santiago de Chile. Great. And on Thursday we have again Grandmaster Joe Ribello, who's going to be here with us, sharing more stories about the martial arts and Kenpo and everything. And well, thanks. Thank you. You have a great day. Thank you, sir. Bye.